Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We're just waiting for some people to arrive still. So this is the session on preparing for low carbon performance and remote energy efficiency work in commercial buildings. As people are still obviously adjusting to these virtual webinars, if you do have any tech issues or anything, just feel free to let us know. There's a few panelists on here. You can enter your comments in the chat or the questions window, and we'll be checking on them periodically throughout the broadcast. And with that, I think we've given a few minutes here for people to arrive, so we will get started. All right, well, once again, thank you so much for everyone for being here. My name is Elihu Dietz, and I'm a project consultant at ERS, an energy efficiency consulting firm. I'm joined today by my colleague, Geeta Subramoni, managing consultant at ERS, as well as Brianna Zagami from NYSERDA. We are all on the outreach team for the Commercial Tenant Program at NYSERDA, and we're going to be talking today about types of efficiency work in commercial buildings that can continue while we're all social distancing and working to keep our fellow New Yorkers safe. Before we get started, I just want to cover a few logistics. As I mentioned, for those still arriving, if you do have any tech issues, just let us know in the chat window here. I will try to check that periodically. Geeta and Brianna are on the call as well, so they will try to address any questions if I miss anything while I'm talking. And these slides will be shared with everyone afterwards, so we often get that question. And the webinar is also being recorded, so a link to the recording will go out to all who registered for the session afterwards, along with the slides. And finally, this session is eligible for AIA credit. If you'd like to receive credit for attending this webinar, but you did not enter your AIA number when you registered, please just email Jordan Cohen, who you received an email from already when you registered. Her email is also on the left side of the screen here. You can just take note of that. Again, if you haven't, if you registered without your AIA number and would like credit, just shoot her an email. Okay. With that, I guess I will start us off, and to begin, I'm going to actually hand this over to Brianna to get us started.
Thanks, Elihu. So hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon on our Preparing for Low Carbon Performance webinar. My name is Brianna Zagami, and I'm on the outreach team for NYSERDA's Commercial Tenant Program. And we are presenting this webinar today mainly as a response to COVID-19. During these circumstances, on-site work has been paused for the last 2 months, and there still remains some uncertainty as to when on-site work will be fully operational again. As a result of Governor Cuomo's New York State on Pause executive order, NYSERDA has paused all on-site work conducted by our contractors for all of our clean energy programs through May 15th. And as this situation continues to change, our teams are here to help you navigate our programs while also prioritizing your health and safety. So be sure to visit our website, which is listed here, which is updated with the latest information from both the state's guidance and NYSERDA's response to the evolving health crisis. Next slide, please, Elihu. So some of you in attendance may already be familiar with NYSERDA's Commercial Tenant Program, but for those of you who are not, I would want to just provide a brief overview of the program before passing things over to my colleagues. The purpose of the Commercial Tenant Program is really to motivate landlords and tenants to optimize the performance of commercial office spaces through thoughtful design, proactive maintenance and operations, and actionable plans to reduce energy consumption over the life of a lease. So because tenants typically consume more than 50% of a commercial office building's energy, leased spaces represent a substantial opportunity to improve energy efficiency throughout the state. So NYSERDA helps cover the cost of engaging qualified consultants to identify energy-saving opportunities and to plan the implementation of energy efficiency measures in leased office spaces. Next slide.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Brianna. So in light of the new world we're all living in, we're going to first just go through the various types of work that can continue remotely. These are all projects that are eligible for a cost share incentive from the Commercial Tenant Program. I know there's probably going to be a wide range of familiarity with the Commercial Tenant Program, so we'll try to cover that when necessary, but not make this all about the specifics of that program. If you do have questions afterwards, this is very much an opportunity to reach out to us afterwards or through the chats here. We will also look at the downturn electricity use over the last few months and reflect on what that could mean for state and local policy in the short term. And finally, Geeta will walk through some business development approaches and resources that could be useful to keep in mind. So first, I just want to talk about billing analysis opportunities. So if you are working with a tenant, this is the time, a great time to check that they are direct metered, that they have access to their accounts, and create electric and carbon baselines for them to help them understand the scope of the savings and the carbon reduction that is possible for their project. This will help your client understand the scope and begin to sell the implementation of the project internally once they have a better understanding of the full potential. And if you're working with a landlord, this project or this program does cover work with both landlords and tenants. Landlords and tenants. So if you're working with a building owner, doing a billing analysis could help them identify their highest energy consuming tenants, or if they have a portfolio, this is a great time to help them identify the buildings that have higher energy use per square foot, and then find the projects of greatest priority so they can really triage their biggest priority buildings. Now, one aspect to take a deeper look into for some people would be the demand charge, or really what the electricity bill is comprised of in the first place. And if you're assessing potential savings for building owners, consider including demand charge savings into your calculations. There are 4 pieces of a typical commercial electric bill. I just want to go over here for all of us. So on the supply side, there's the energy and demand charges. In this example I've shown here, the customer is using Con Ed actually as their supplier. This is kind of the default. These charges are shown in the green box on the left. Many firms elect to use another firm, an energy service company, to receive their supply. In most cases, the supplier then folds the supplier demand charges into the kWh or energy charge. In this case, the supplier would just show the building owner one fee under kWh. If that's the case, there's not a lot of potential for the building owner to be able to lower those demand charges, their supply demand charges, other than try to negotiate if they were to reduce total energy demand in the building. But on the delivery side, the energy and supply charges are broken out for them, and the building owner can achieve savings with reductions in peak demand. As you can see here, the energy and demand charges are very close to one another in your delivery charges. So those are things that you can control and affect that peak demand. There are obviously other billing rates to be on. What we've shown here is a monthly rate. There's also time of use. which incentivizes greater reductions in certain time periods throughout the day. There's also a winter and summer time period of that. So this could be a great time to familiarize yourself with those. And this rule about supply and delivery charges still holds regardless of whether it's a monthly or a time of use billing model. And so the point here is ultimately to help your clients better understand the savings potential for an energy efficiency project. And for that, you can develop a baseline for tenants or building owners with historic energy usage, and while also showing their demand, helping them understand that role in their bills. And then also carbon impacts. This is a great opportunity for your firm to develop strategies for showing the carbon impacts and how they relate to energy usage within a given building. It could also be helpful for framing a given project's potential to reduce both energy use costs and carbon. Now, on the whole building side, I wanted to highlight one useful tool, that is the New York City Energy and Water Performance Map. This shows self-reported energy and water usage, as well as square footage of properties greater than 25,000 square feet. This can be particularly useful for starting a conversation with building owners about addressing their concerns over something like Local Law 97. And for those not familiar with this tool, you can see there's some tabs across the top there for energy use intensity, water use intensity, and greenhouse gas emissions. And you can select just below that the reporting year for that building. It is currently goes up to 2017, and 2016 and 17 would have building data for 25,000 square foot buildings and larger. And under that greenhouse gas tab, you can see the tools. The tool gives you actually the greenhouse gas intensity targets for the primary use type of that property, and then puts it side by side with current greenhouse gas intensity for that year. So that helps you. You don't have to go and look up for the primary use type for that property. You don't have to go and look up the Local Law 97 limits. They list them right there on the right. And again, this isn't, this is going to be using 2017 data. This is a great way to start the conversation with a building owner or property manager to get them thinking broadly about their portfolio and give, without a huge amount of input on your side, legwork on your side to frame that conversation. Some of the variables to keep in mind with Local Law 97 calculations would be the year of data, and obviously, as we'll talk about later, there's been a downturn in energy usage across commercial properties in the city here, across the state. So, the year you use will matter. It's important to show maybe a couple different years when you're trying to give someone an idea of their Local Law 97 liability. Their building use type, as we noted, this map shows Local Law 84 data, so this is all self-reported data. And one assumes that the building use type is correct in there, but that would be a factor that could significantly vary, change the ultimate calculation here for what their limit is. So that's a good thing to pay attention to. And if they have different use types within that building, those square footages should be apportioned to the appropriate limit. Gross square footage is another factor. There's a difficult thing to know about, what the correct gross square footage is. This is, again, self-reported data shown in this tool. So we encourage you to really work with a building owner to really understand the gross square footage of their property, and as that will affect the Local Law 97 calculations and estimates. And I should note, as I said, the slides will be available to everybody after the webinar, and anything that's really underlined here is there's a link to it too. So there's a link in the previous slide to the title. You can get to the energy and water use map. Okay. So now let's talk about virtual energy audits. So the Commercial Tenant Program is accepting virtual audits for smaller projects. So you could think about this as kind of your level 1 type audit. there is the potential to allow cost share for virtual audits for larger projects, and CTP, the Commercial Tenant Program, is open to that, but that judgment will be made on a case-by-case basis. If there is a project where virtual auditing is possible, definitely let us know. You can email any of us and start that conversation now. If you're new to virtual auditing, that's okay. Or if this is something that you're more familiar with and you have ideas for how we might evaluate larger projects, please be in touch. And also the Department of Public Service and NYSERDA will be hosting a webinar soon on remote energy efficiency audits. No date has been announced for this, but we wanted to put this on your radar. We will be notifying folks when that's announced. So if you don't receive our emails already, you can sign up for the Commercial Tenant Program on the Commercial Tenant Program website under the Connect with Us page. There's a link in this slide as well. But if you are on your browser currently, you can navigate to the Commercial Tenant Program at NYSERDA and connect under the Connect with Us page, excuse me. All right, so on virtual audits, there are lots of different ways to go about a virtual audit, and this has hardly been standardized in the industry so far. There are software packages and various processes that have been developed. ERS has been using one method, and we wanted to share some early takeaways here in case it's helpful. So in this process, an engineer works with the property owner to get design drawings, at least of the site that's being reviewed. Using the drawings to get familiar with the equipment and the layout of the space, the engineer can then schedule a call with an on-site staff person. Through using an app like WhatsApp or various other any kind of video conferencing service, the on-site staff person then walks the space, taking snapshots of the current equipment and getting nameplate or model numbers on any equipment that you need. This is not meant to really be exhaustive. It obviously depends on the scope of the work that you're doing, but this really should be thought of as a level 1 audit. And the pictures that you get are meant to represent a sample of the largest energy using equipment in that space. It's not as if you're taking a picture of every single piece of equipment that uses energy. And as I mentioned, this is really just one method, but if this is useful, I wanted to highlight some suggestions. First, that the design drawings are really pretty critical for understanding the space. Even if they're old, they can be useful for developing your strategy. And the key here is planning. So on-site staff are often busy, and right now they might have new projects on their plate, and they also tend to have a wide range of expertise. So plan for really a maximum, we'd say, of somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes with the on-site staff person for your larger projects, really, and then maybe even less time for smaller spaces. Also, the time to get pictures is while you're actually on the phone with them. The user can snap a picture while on the call and send them to you in the moment. They don't have to wait till after the phone call is completed. It's best not to wait until after the call to get the pictures because they might be too grainy, or they might not capture the actual right information, or the person just simply forgets to do it. So good to have working understanding with them before you really jump on the call of what's going to be expected. And then it's pretty straightforward to actually snap that picture while you're on the call. And in terms of apps to use, I don't have any real best practices. I'd say you can use anything from WhatsApp to FaceTime to Zoom or any other conferencing service that you use. Whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever the user on the other end, the on-site staff person feels comfortable with. I haven't seen a TikTok yet for virtual auditing, but I'm sure we're not far from that day. A key again is just really to plan and make best use of the video to call the time you have with the on-site staff. And if it goes well, then in the Commercial Tenant Program, at least there are lots of other projects you could even do in that building. So it gives you an opportunity to develop that relationship. And finally, before we leave this topic, I'll just note again that these suggestions are just for project work under the Commercial Tenant Program. At this point, NYSERDA and other utility programs, I think, are still evaluating different guidelines on virtual auditing, and it will be very much program by program. So just sort of stay tuned. But for the commercial tenant program, this is kind of where our thinking is right now, and there'll be much more to come on this topic from NYSERDA. Okay, so another type of work that can continue remotely is reviewing design drawings to find opportunities for energy use reduction. So whether you're working with a tenant or an owner, you can help your client develop design guidelines for their office or building to lock in future energy savings. So you can also create a baseline model for an owner to help you make recommendations to achieve, really much larger savings. And on this topic, there are a host of resources that we'd love to share. Some of these I think are well known, but there's a recent one at the top here. The Lawrence Berkeley National Lab is creating and testing scalable approaches to achieving deeper energy savings in existing commercial buildings. And there are two components to this. There's the integrated system packages that are pre-engineered to minimize the effort required for implementation of the project. And then also seamlessly incorporating the integrated system packages into real estate lifecycle costs, or rather, I should say, real estate lifecycle events. So this is going to be a growing area of interest, I think, is coordinating, big retrofit projects with lifecycle events. So I would encourage anyone interested in this, to reach out to Paul Matthew here, whose contact information is listed, the building scientist, and very open to pursuing new projects with engineering companies and building owners. Another resource I want to point people to is the step-by-step design construction process from the Tenant Energy Optimization Program from the Urban Land Institute. It integrates energy efficiency into tenant spaces specifically, and is geared toward delivering and showing excellent financial returns. And then finally, probably the thing we all might be most familiar with, which is the Lead Tenant Design and Construction Guidelines, which educates tenants in implementing sustainable design and construction features in their tenant improvement build-outs. Okay, on the commercial tenant program, there's a couple other areas, and I want to make sure to highlight here. So these are also areas that can be cost shared through the commercial tenant program. The first is tasks related to planning assistance. And this helps tenants implement their energy use reduction, or energy use reduction goals, I should say. This could be helping a tenant select the right equipment and develop equipment buying guidelines, for instance, integrating new maintenance plans given results of a recent audit or a study, or planning assistance could also include helping an owner or a tenant develop an engagement strategy for helping people in the building understand where their energy use is coming from, why it matters, what it has to do with carbon maybe, what it has to do with their sustainability goals. And this could include helping your clients track savings after they've implemented a project, and communicating that to staff to motivate them to look for more savings in the future. In other words, getting buy-in from either within the tenant organization, within a company, or within a group of tenants in a building. Next, I also want to highlight the other projects or pilot projects program or aspect of the commercial tenant program. And this attempts to incorporate innovative approaches to energy use reduction. So we have, I'm leaving these question marks here. This is, do you have an innovative approach? Do you have ideas to achieve deep energy savings in commercial office spaces? This could be a great time to develop that scope of work, that project that maybe it's been in the back of your mind, you've been thinking about, and develop that scope of work, engage NYSERDA and the commercial tenant program to really help you figure out how to make this project a reality. And I just want to go back for just a second and relate that the on the planning assistance side, under normal conditions, commissioning is obviously retro commissioning is impossible at the moment. But just a reminder that this program does cover those things. So to just be thinking about that as things to include in your projects with tenants and landlords. Right. So at this point, we're going to try something here and take a little bit of a pause. So we would love to hear from attendees whether your company or firm or organization is considering either participating in or actually doing a virtual audit. And I can make a poll live. Okay, so now everyone should see a pop-up that appears. I will note in the chat and see if there are issues, but they don't appear to be right now. Okay. Good. So it looks like it's about a 57% yes, 8% no, and 42% not sure. And with that, I'd also like to hear, has your firm completed any virtual audits to date? So I'm going to close this poll and open the next one. Okay, so now everyone should have seen a new poll open up that says, has your firm completed any virtual audits? And this is really helpful because Commercial Tenant Program, along with other programs, are trying to develop guidelines and best practices and assistance for people to do if this is the work that they're interested in, to do this and develop guidelines for it. So we'd love to provide more resources. So it looks like we've got here 11% are saying yes, 79% say no, that your firm has not completed any virtual audits, and 11% say not sure. If attendees are not seeing this, I wish I could show it, but anyway, it's now 13% yes, 76% no, and 10% not sure. All right, so great. So next we're going to actually take a look at the downturn in electricity use and highlight some relevant state and local policies that we want to make sure everyone's aware of. So first off, just the regional impacts of energy use now in the COVID world now that we're in. So this is a map showing each different zone within the NYSO, the New York Independent Systems Operator Control Area, and shows the change in electric loads for each region. And Zone J here is first to the New York City region, where you can see quite dramatic reductions. And some of these most notable trends are, across the state, there's been an 8% on average reduction in load. That's weather normalized, and this is just below what's expected for this week. In the New York City area, hourly demand from April 27th to May 1st ranged from about 4% down to a little more than 19% below typical levels. And for weekdays, reductions in electric consumption in New York City averaged just about 19% below expected levels during the 8 a.m. hour. So that's our biggest impact. And none of this is obviously particularly surprising, although I think in New York City, it's obviously even more dramatic because of the high density of commercial buildings and the relative square footage of commercial buildings relative to all the built environment square footage. So I want to reflect first just on a couple of big state policies that we want to keep in mind here, that the New York State Energy Conservation Code still goes into effect on May 12th, next week. And this is important to keep in mind. This is new codes are important to the commercial environment here, and there are significant changes to these codes. Some of the New York City codes, there will be there's an actual presentation on this next week by the Urban Green Council. If you're interested in learning more, I would encourage you to check out their resources and training. And they are hosting a virtual event on May 12th, the day this comes out, with Gina Bokra, the Chief Sustainability Officer at the Department of Buildings. And also just to keep in mind, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the CLCPA, means that there will still be a profound shift in energy use in buildings, that we are moving toward a new world in buildings. So, you know, there's a lot that's changing, a lot up in the air right now, but these two things are going to help us make a big difference on energy use reduction in buildings. And on the local level, you know, I'm obviously not speaking on behalf of the city, of course, so this isn't, you know, I don't have any inside knowledge here, but I just wanted to collect sort of updates that we've seen recently in this space and convey them to this audience. So this is just sort of a roundup of some of the things we're thinking over. You know, Local Law 84, there's been an update. Normally this was due on May 1st, but is now being delayed until August 1st. And Local Law 87, there have not been delays announced for the energy efficiency reports. Obviously, we know people can't do metering right now in retro commissioning, but there have not been any announced delays there. The Local Law 33, these are letter grades that will go into all buildings over 25,000 square feet, and this starts October 1st now. So buildings will have 30 days to post this letter grade somewhere conspicuous in their lobby. As a reminder, these letter grades will be based on 2019 usage. So just want to make sure, you know, this is not going to, building owners may or may not be familiar with this law already, and if they're not, it's certainly the time to let them know that this is coming. But, you know, they can't do anything about the grade that's coming in October, but you can certainly help them think through the impact of their energy use through both COVID and also just as they think of reopening their energy use and lowering and getting a better grade next year. So just want to really highlight that. The Energy Star program, I think Deidre will mention this later, but is adjusting for this, trying to figure out a way to adjust for the impact of COVID. So there will certainly be more to come out of the Energy Star program on that. Local Law 97, we touched on briefly already, but the demand drop for COVID, just want to highlight this, is not going to affect the Local Law 97 calculations. This is Local Law 97 calculations or potential fines will be based on usage, energy usage in 2024. So just make sure to keep that in mind. And energy use reduction from COVID, while I showed that slide about Zone J, the impacts to Zone J, the energy use reduction impacts to any specific building will vary quite a bit and depend on a lot of factors in terms of how that building's been operated during this time. So just make sure people know it's not it's not the same impact across the board, and that's where this audience can be particularly helpful for helping building owners and managers understand the impact of the last few weeks. And on Local 97, most people on the call are likely familiar, but this serves as a reminder that while some buildings are already under their 2024 carbon limits, the 2030 limits are 46% lower for commercial buildings. So this is will require substantial work. And these limits were not chosen arbitrarily. They are based on the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% in New York City by 2050. And since buildings represent nearly 70% of our emissions, this remains the space where we really need to make the most progress. So now is the time to really help your clients, or still the time, I should say, to really help your clients with long-term planning in this area. Okay, and with that, I'm going to bring in Geeta Subramoni, a managing consultant at ERS, to introduce our next segment. Geeta, are you on?
Yes, I am here. Good
okay,
afternoon,
great.
As Elihu mentioned, I'm a managing consultant at ERS, and I work with him with the NYSERDA Commercial Tenant Program. And it looks like we've got the results from the quick poll up first. Has your firm completed any virtual audits? 78% saying no, 12% yes, and 10% saying not sure. Great. So moving on into some of the business development approaches. So certainly this is a challenging time for many of our firms, as well as tenants who normally occupy commercial spaces, as well as landlords who lease those spaces out as we're all sheltering in place and working from home. Remote business development can still occur during the shutdown, and really I think the goal here is to kind of help landlords understand that the climate change regulations and things that we can do to mitigate that are still going to be something that we have to deal with beyond getting over this pandemic. Something that I've been thinking about recently is a way that this pandemic highlights how ill-prepared our society was for such a catastrophic event. And our preparedness certainly beforehand was certainly not proportionate to the known risks that we were aware of before this happened. And I think a parallel can certainly be drawn with climate change. And our job here is to really help prepare the real estate industry and the tenants that they house for the impacts of climate change while showing them the immediate value. So we have put together a few ideas of how we can express the value proposition to tenant energy efficiency to building owners and operators. We kind of came up with this narrative before the shutdowns and before the pandemic really struck, but certainly there is a lot of useful data there that can be adapted and utilized and presented with certainly an amount of sensitivity to your partners in the real estate industry as well as their tenants. So one of the things that I like to point out to building owners is the trends with green building certifications. So there are a number of different certification programs. Energy Star certification is one of the most popular ones, with almost 40,000 buildings certified by Energy Star. And of course, this will have an influence on the building letter grade law that Elihu referred to earlier. LEED is another certification program that we're all familiar with, not just addressing energy use, but also other sustainability areas. There are about 2.2 million square feet that are certified by LEED every day. And there are almost 1,000 LEED certified buildings in New York City alone. There are also a number of other certification programs that address the health and well-being of the occupants of the building, such as Fitwell and Well. And these are starting to gain traction in the marketplace. So one of the things that I'd like to point out is certainly for the data on Energy Star certified buildings is that the trend has been growing over the past decade or more. And you'll notice with the graph on the left that things started really taking off around 2007, 2008 during the time of the global economic recession. And another thing that I will point out too is that as these building certifications become more commonplace, it's going to soon become the baseline of what real estate professionals will have to invest in their buildings for. So Elihu mentioned this earlier too, the Energy Star certification process is adapting and figuring out how they deal with the impacts of the shutdown. So applications for Energy Star certification, are going to try to limit the data that is presented during the time of the COVID shutdown. And additionally, site visits are still going to be needed to complete some of the certification process. However, it seems like the EPA is taking time-sensitive applications case by case. So if you've got buildings that are seeking the certification now, I would encourage everyone to visit the Energy Star website to get more details and get in touch with EPA directly on how that might affect an application for a potential client. So another thing that's going to be something that could motivate landlords to really look at this with a keener eye, especially during the shutdown, is unlocking greater value from their real estate assets. And understandably, right now is certainly an uncertain economic time for not only real estate professionals, but people who would be leasing space from them. However, data from the pre-COVID world shows that green buildings do see an increased rental and sales price premiums, as well as increased occupancy. So this is going to be an interesting facet to pay attention to, because as companies who would be leasing space from real estate owners reshuffle their business models and really examine what types of space that they truly need, especially as we kind of start coming back from the shutdown, that's going to be an interesting time for real estate professionals to really look at the spaces that they operate and to ensure that their operating costs, including keeping energy costs low, are as low as possible so that they can derive greater value from that. So I think in the post-COVID world, real estate owners are really going to have to take a close look at delivering greater value to their tenants as these business models change. So another trend that we want to make building owners aware of is that their tenants or prospective tenants are increasingly reporting on sustainability metrics. So in 2011, only 20% of S&P 500 companies did any kind of corporate sustainability reporting. By 2018, that number grew to 86%. So companies are looking to deliver reports to their consumers and their shareholders on what they're doing to be part of the solution, whether it's environmental or otherwise. One thing to note is that energy efficiency of the space that a company occupies is an easy metric to report on. So increasingly, I think companies are going to be looking at the space that they occupy and whether it's a green space, is it energy efficient, not only from a cost perspective, but also from an optics perspective. So this is something that you could really use to appeal to building owners to show that their space will meet the needs that their tenants are looking for as people come back to work. Another point to make is the importance of tenants that tenants place on intellectual capital, and this is something that people that own and operate buildings can really use to make sure that they're delivering spaces that appeal to prospective tenants. So for these companies, employees are really everything. So around 40 years ago, over 80% of a firm's value was represented by their tangible or physical assets, but now that's completely flipped. Because of things like technology companies, changes in our economy, etc., intangible assets now represent the majority of many firms' market value. So that means employee retention and productivity is extremely important. Research suggests that direct replacement costs of an employee can reach as high as 50 to 60% of an employee's annual salary, with total costs associated with turnover ranging from 90 to 200% of annual salary. So intellectual capital is very, very important to these companies. And I think one thing that we're seeing now, based on research and surveys and interviews, is that low carbon, mindfully designed spaces can help companies maintain their talent pool and increase employee retention. And additionally, employee wellness increases productivity and could potentially reduce employer-supported healthcare costs. And again, this is certainly an interesting time to address this dynamic as many people are out of work and certain companies are taking another look at their business models and also what kind of space that they need in order to maintain a healthy workforce that feels comfortable working in those spaces. So I think landlords are going to have to take a close look at what what they're offering those prospective tenants and see if it matches up with their values. And I think now more than ever, employers are certainly concerned with how they treat their employees and the optics of that for not only their shareholders, but also for consumers at large. So these are certainly some types of data that we can fold into messaging to landlords to help them understand how they can take this opportunity to address their carbon footprint, address the spaces that they provide to companies that are looking to have mindfully designed spaces for their employees. Before concluding, I will mention that for those that are looking to engage companies in business development or provide these pitches, feel free to use any of this data that's presented here. We can certainly follow up with sources that we cited for these slides, and we encourage people to use that in their pitches going forward. And again, definitely encourage anyone to get in touch with us to set up meetings to discuss innovative business development strategies for commercial tenant spaces, innovative projects, things that you could be doing during this time as we're staying at home and working from home, or lunch and learns for your company that we can host remotely to learn more about the program and figure out how we can get more people involved. So now I think we can take some questions, and certainly we want to know what topics you'd be interested in for future webinars and trainings.
Yeah, and I would just say thank you, Geeta, and feel free to use. That's exactly what I was going to say. So, first off, feel free to use the questions or the chat window. We've had users be able to see one or the other, so that's either one that will get to us. So if you have ideas for future resources that you'd like to see, please let us know in the chat or the questions window. And also, as Geeta mentioned about scheduling a call with us, we actually have now a scheduling app that you can use. So this will be a live link again in the notes, in the slides that people will get after this to schedule a meeting with NYSERDA staff. We do send out regular emails and notifications to people, newsletters. So, if we can include anything in there that brainstorm with you about resources you need to develop either a virtual auditing business, to explore a new and innovative approach to pursuing energy efficiency in commercial tenant spaces, please do be communicative during this time. This is obviously a lot is changing, but we want to make sure that this industry feels supported, and ultimately we need to retrofit a lot of buildings. So there's a lot of work ahead of us. Now let me see if see if I can address any of the questions. Refer to the chat window here. Give me just 1 minute. Okay, so does NYSERDA have any guidance on how to conduct a virtual audit? Yes, so NYSERDA is working on expanding remote audits. The current focus is for residential buildings right now and developing protocols on that front. So you should check with individual programs at NYSERDA that you're currently using or familiar with, where you have contacts there, if you want to do virtual audits, whether that's the Commercial Tenant Program, or again, that could be the FlexTech program. And we'll just, we can take each proposal on a case-by-case basis, and at this point treat it as a conversation. And again, I think there will be more guidance coming out in the future. All right, what else here? So would NYSERDA support projects that use remote auditing software? Yeah, so again, check in with the program that you want to participate in and see if there are any specific protocols in place. We are certainly very interested in better understanding what tools consultants are working with and considering to continue delivering value to their customers. We know that there are increasing numbers of types of software and things out there, so any solution that you have been interested in or know about and used in the past, and you want to make the case for, please, please be in touch about that. That'd be very, very useful. Okay, here's another one. So would NYSERDA cost share measures that are more focused on indoor air quality? Interesting. So NYSERDA is primarily focused on energy efficiency. And so in some cases, and where it makes sense, we can consider including some air quality measures in energy efficiency projects. Again, I guess I would say, contact your NYSERDA project manager for the individual program where you're interested in applying. And if you know of any specific technology that is more in the realm of HVAC best practices and health and safety, please get in touch with us, and we can evaluate them on a case-by-case basis and evaluate whether and how the NYSERDA program that you're engaged with, whether that's Commercial Tenant Program or FlexTech or some other program, how we can support those solutions. Hope that helps. Okay, I'll just say, we'll leave the chat open as people think of questions. Feel free to type them in here in the chat. And we'll stay on for a few more minutes and just see if people have questions, and I'll just address them as they roll in. For those of you attending, I appreciate you being here. If you do have any questions or follow-up, just please reach out. Our emails are here. We will be sending the slides and the recording of this webinar as well. And again, I think we can hang out here for a couple more minutes and see if people have any questions. I guess I'll open up to any of the panelists too, if anyone else on here has anything to add to any of the material that we covered today. Feel free to step in, and maybe that'll initiate some questions for attendees.
This is Geeta again. Just have maybe one thing to emphasize too. When LU covered a number of things that the Commercial Tenant Program could cost share as far as studies, and certainly the other projects category is definitely something interesting that we would love to hear some great ideas on, especially things like innovative space management and behavior programs. Certainly coming back to work after the pandemic subsides will really make us take a look at how we use space. Are we going to stagger workforce as they come into tenant spaces? How is that going to affect energy consumption? So that certainly is something that I would be personally interested in seeing some projects on. So we definitely encourage everyone to reach out to NYSERDA to brainstorm and talk through ideas, because this is certainly a challenging time, but a time to really take this opportunity to look at some different ways that we can help people reduce their energy consumption while maintaining their businesses.
Yeah, and I think that's the big elephant in the room here about how people are going to respond after in commercial spaces, given the shock to the economy right now. But it does seem like air quality is one of those things that I think energy efficiency engineers have long known was an undervalued, underappreciated measure in a commercial space, whether that's CO2 levels, particulate matter even. There are ways that air quality experts have been highlighting for years that we can be better served by our HVAC equipment. So obviously there's not always going to be a great marriage between HVAC equipment and energy efficiency. There are going to be some trade-offs sometimes, but there's also we know that there's huge opportunities for efficiency savings while also improving air quality in the systems we have in place today. I think we can all think of examples of buildings we've seen where it might be as simple as a maintenance schedule that needs to just be rewritten and rethought out. And I think this community is in a great position to assist facilities managers and building owners or champions within a tenant organization to distill that information, help them communicate that information to the right parties, and then be a support network for them throughout. And I think the Commercial Tenant Program, along with other programs at NYSERDA, is structured to help people, assist with those processes all along the way. And I think the other unknown we don't know is the opportunity for innovation right now. That responding to what customers are worried about and putting your best attempt forward in terms of addressing that and meeting these longer term carbon and energy efficiency goals that we know go hand in hand with our other goals, which is of course reducing costs, which is going to be a critical time right now. It's energy efficiency is a reliable investment, and so therefore it's a great time for people to be thinking about this kind of project. All right, well, I've certainly rambled on enough, and I think just judging from the questions I'm getting here, it looks like we're about done. So unless any of the Brianna or Geeta have anything to add here, I think we can end the webinar. Thank you all again for attending, and please be in touch with us, and so we can begin the conversation on how to address these spaces in this new world. Right. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.